Hello everyone, my name is Ayandra Kaiwa and I will be presenting the second part of Lab 3 on the first hack. One of the goals here was to identify the vulnerability that we use for exploitation to be able to achieve that root access into the CYB-610 virtual machine. From there, I will be detailing the mitigation methods that could be utilized for the machine that will help secure it. Lastly, I will be going through the common attacks present in cybersecurity. Okay, so to start off the process of gaining that root access into the CYB-610 machine, I had to make sure to first start off by making sure that the Catalytics and the CYB-610 machine were both still on the same network settings. So I did go into it and I was able to find out that they're both on the same network settings, and I put them both on host network for this to work. So once this was established, I started with the command ifconfig to see if my IP address was ready and there for me to use for the Catalytics, along with picking up the IP address and information of the CYB-610 machine, which is shown on the right screenshot. Next, I did some enumeration by running the command nmap with the hyphen lowercase s with v hyphen o, and then I also had it was followed by the IP address, and this IP address was actually the IP address for the CYB-610 machine, which I was able to get that information by running these commands. So that was the 192.168.56.3, and then I followed it with the hyphen p with the 1-65535. So that was actually there so it can scan every TCP port on the 192.168.56.3. And basically this probes open ports to identify the running services and their versions. And then attempts, basically also attempts the OS fingerprinting to guess the target's operating system. Now looking here to the left, there is a screenshot that is showing the command nmap with the hyphen p hyphen with the hyphen another hyphen, which is followed by the uppercase A, and it has 192.168.56.3, and basically it's looking through all the 65,000 ports. So this basically shows me the different ports again, and I can also see that it's running on Apache as well. So it's a bit of information that I will be needing as I carry out this root access. Also, I was able to run the mf console command that you're seeing to the right screenshot, and basically this one shows the interactive interface, module list, and information, and then a runtime status. So basically sessions, jobs, and so on. Allowing you to perform the scanning, the exploitation, and post-exploitation tasks that I will be going ahead and getting into. Next, I also had to run a nmap-sn, which was lowercase, followed by the 192.168.56.0, then with the /24 command. And this showed me a list of the IPs that responded and are considered up. So from there, I was able to look up the website. So when you look to the top right corner here of my screenshot, this is where I was going to Firefox to look up that IP address that I initially found to be the IP address of the CYB-610 machine. So when I looked up 192.168.56.3, it brought me to the login information that you can see here. And basically from there, I viewed the page source, but from here, I wasn't able to really see much information, so I just kind of kept going on, which you will see in the next slide. So since I didn't get much information when I viewed that page source, I did go back and check out the vulnerabilities. And when I scanned through all the vulnerabilities, I did go with choosing the MySQL, and this is where I chose to attack at. So once this was decided, I then went to go back to the Firefox, and from Firefox, I was able to navigate my way to the proxy settings. And the proxy settings, I went ahead and made sure that I set it to a manual proxy configuration to the 127.0.0.1, and I made sure that it was connected with the port 8080. So in the previous slide, I went ahead and I had made sure that all of my proxy settings were set to 127.0.0.1. So from there, in this screenshot to my left, I made sure to pull up Burp Suite, and once I did from the root terminal, I was able to pull up Burp Suite, go through a few questions, and the first thing I went ahead and checked for was the proxy settings in Burp Suite. So basically, I checked it and I realized everything that I had done previously in the other slide has carried out successfully into Burp Suite by checking that everything is at 127.0.01, and then also the port is at 8080. From there, I was then going back to Firefox and I looked up Burp to download a certificate, and you can see that I downloaded it on the top right screenshot here, and then I had inserted it, the downloaded certificate, into the settings where certificates were, which you can see to the bottom right screenshot here as well. So my next goal here was to make sure that I was able to get and retrieve the information that I was about to do in Firefox. So basically, I first had to make sure that my intercept was on in Burp Suite. Once I was able to turn this on, I went ahead and went to Firefox and I tried to log in again this time. And when I logged in, I made sure that my login username I put as admin, and just a random password I just put as password. Once I did this, because my intercept was on, Burp Suite was able to retrieve this information, which you can see here. Once I was able to do that, I then sent this to the intruder, where I then went to the intruders tab and copied the admin and password that you can see here. I then also made sure to paste the SQL injections that I had copied over into the payloads tab, and then I started my attack. So before I could even start my attack, I had to make sure I did all of these other steps beforehand. So once I completed this, I was able to see the results of my attack, and I had to look for a response now from the server indicating that the attack was successful. When I navigated my way to request 38, this is where I could find it saying, "Welcome to the basic administrative web console." And this tells me that it's showing me that the login was successful. So this is what I was looking for. So once I got this information, before I left this browser, I basically made sure to pull up requested browser in the original session, and I made sure that I was copying the output shown in the screenshot on the bottom here, and I had to copy that before I went to the next step. So now when I go back to Firefox and I put that IP address that I did put in before, I can now see that I can try to ping a machine on the network here now. So this is where I started off with putting different pings. So I had to put in a few different pings just to see that everything is running smoothly and to just get information as well. So basically, as you can see, I put in different pings, and the first one being on the top was just the IP address, and it just gave me all the information here. The second one, which is in the middle, this was the IP address, and it was followed by, of course, a semicolon with the IP and then ADDR, which is basically shorthand for address. And then the last one on the bottom is, of course, again with the IP address, and this was followed by a semicolon with the ifconfig. And also note that the IP address I used for the ping was actually for the Kali Linux virtual machine. So the next objective that I have was to make sure that all the systems were communicating successfully with each other. And how I went about this is that I did a bash command ping, where basically I wanted a communication channel to be opened up between this system and back to the IP address that I put in, and I chose to have it connected to 888 to listen on the ports. So before I could even do the bash command, I had to make sure that I went ahead and went to the root terminal, which you can see on the right screenshot here, and I did the command nc with the -nvlp with 8888. So this is where it would be listening on. Once I hit enter, I could see that it was listening on it, and this is where I could start gathering my information and doing the next steps. So after I did that command that you saw in the previous slide, I did follow it with ls command and a few other commands as well, just gathering my information as I went along. From there, I also did a search exploit, and this is where I saw I had a exploit available, and I then used the information that I got from it, which was the CentOS 4.5.9 2.6.9. And basically, I used this information to go ahead and search it up on Google. And I was able to find on Google that we have basically the EDB ID of 9545. So I had to use this specifically, and from that web page I was also able to get the raw code. So I needed this raw code, and I had to copy it over to take it to the root terminal again, and I had to save it into my root terminal. And I saved it with the program I used, which is VI, and I named the file 9545.6 because I thought that would be the best way to name it, because that's what we were using and that's what we had found initially. And basically that's showing that it means that it wasn't compiled just yet. And from there it was inserted and it had been saved, which you can see on the left screenshot, that I've inserted the raw code and got it saved into it. Basically from there I had saved it and I did a service Apache 2 start, and you can also see that I did a sudo mv9545.c followed by a bunch of other commands as well, just showing that I was able to move it over to a different file and get everything saved and ready to go for the next step. So I also then did a wget command followed with the IP address with the /9545.c. And basically after a few commands here that you can see that I had done, which was a few, I was able to gain root access, and I was trying to get a password and a username started here. So when you look here on the screenshot, you can see that one of the root terminals here in the middle, you see all the commands that I had used, and what you see also is that I am changing the password for my CYB-610 2 machine. So basically it's allowing me to make my username and my password that you can see here. I made my username as Diana D, and with my followed by my password here. So from there I was able to now go into my CYB-610 2 machine, and now I can actually log in. So I had officially done it. I gained my root access to the CYB-610 2 machine, and from there I was even also able to do a command that you can see near the bottom, and it's basically showing that my username is now connected with the machine, and I have officially gained root access into the CYB-610 2 machine, and I was able to log in. And that is basically how I got my root access into the CYB-610 2 machine, and that was the end of that process. So after seeing that I was able to gain access to the CYB-610 2 machine, it's also good to note that even though we were able to hack into the CYB-610 2 machine successfully, it's also important to find ways to implement mitigation techniques so that we can secure it and make sure that it's protected from something like this happening in the future. So one of the first mitigation techniques that I thought of was limiting this network access to the infected host would help it make sure that the attack and damages aren't spread to other devices. So this is something important that would need to be implemented to make sure that there isn't further damage and to protect it from happening. Another thing that we can do is include network segmentation. So network segmentation is by limiting the database hosts such as MySQL and so on, since they manage the data for other systems, and it's also there to manage the IPs. The third possible mitigation technique can be utilizing what is known as the principle of least privilege, where privileges are given to accounts based on their job function and nothing more. So this would actually help limit damages and lowers the risks of individuals or users gaining any privileges or access to different parts of the system that they don't need. And also it's also a good idea to implement a firewall into this as well, where the traffic would be redirected. Lastly, having monitoring in place such as alerts would help with detecting suspicious activity earlier on as well, such as any lateral movement patterns, failed connection requests, and so on. Next, I will be taking you through the common attacks and what they are in these next slides here. So starting here is the buffer overflow, which is when intruders are able to gain unauthorized access through a software coding error or vulnerability, according to Fortinet 2025. Basically, old software especially can be affected by this since it doesn't have the modern protections in place, such as NX and so on. Some of the common consequences that you can run into with this attack are the server crashing, access control loss, and many other security problems, such as arbitrary code execution, again, according to Fortinet 2025. So the categorization that it falls under is corruption attacks that involves errors within memory. And basically, it also allows for an intruder to gain not only access with higher level privileges, but to also take control of how the program behaves due to that memory issue. Next, there is privilege escalation, and this is where an attacker begins with exploiting vulnerabilities to first achieve the access into a system to begin their process of privilege escalation, which is followed by advancements made in their permissions, according to Bergman's 2022. So the reasons that privilege escalation is successful is when there's inadequate safeguards, when there's the overlooking of the principle of least privilege, and exploitable software vulnerabilities, according to Heimdall 2024. The main types are horizontal privilege escalation, which is basically an account takeover. It's when an attacker gains privileged access to a standard user account with lower level privileges. The second one here is the vertical privilege escalation or privilege elevation. And again, this begins similarly with an attacker using a foothold to try to escalate vertically to gain access to accounts with higher privilege. So here the categorization is more of an access escalation type, which basically is an attack aiming to gain higher level of permissions. Once the access is all the way to the top, they gain the highest level of permissions. Once that's achieved, the intruder remains hidden away or can do a lateral movement where it takes over other systems next as well. Next is rootkits. So this is when intruders can achieve root access through malicious computer program or software code. So according to Fortinet 2025, this is a type of malware program that enables cybercriminals to gain access to and infiltrate data from machines without being detected. So they will overwrite system programs or install hidden kernel components to remain invisible. Therefore, this is why the categorization is malware that aims to remain out of sight. So it is made to remain in the stealth mode and to remain controlling the system, which is persistence. So basically, this allows the attackers to remain inside the system over a long period of time while they steal the data that they need. So the next one we're going to discuss is Trojans. So they are viewed at first as permitted software or code when in reality it is carrying destructive capabilities, according to Baker 2022. So the intruder is aiming to have the ability to perform unauthorized tasks such as data theft, backdoor, and so on. The different types of Trojan malware can be exploit, downloader, ransom, backdoor, DDoS, fake AV, rootkit, SMS, banking, and even game thief, according to Baker 2022. And the categorization here is malware utilized when needing that initial compromising of a system, the type of malware that is deceptive in seeming like it is safe software. Now, a backdoor is when it refers to any method by which authorized and unauthorized users are able to get around normal security measures and it then gains high-level user access, which is also known as root access, on a computer system, network, or software applications. So once they are in, cybercriminals can use a backdoor to steal data, which can be personal data, it can be financial data, and from there to also install additional malware and hijack devices, according to Malwarebytes So in other words, backdoors are hidden entry points that attackers have left behind so that those avenues of access points later are still available to them when needing to get back into the system again later on. And again, it's according to Malwarebytes. So the categorization here is focused on persistence, since the aim here is to have the attackers be able to gain that access long term. And this is needed to achieve easy access when returning. So when it comes to viruses, a virus is basically a type of malicious software program or malware that, when executed, replicates itself by modifying other computer programs and inserting its code, according to Geeks for Geeks 2025. It can delete, it can slow down the system resources, it can mess up programs, spying, and so on. So there are some ways to prevent your computer from viruses. It can be installing antivirus software, updating it regularly, being cautious of emails and downloads. You can also use really strong passwords or back up your data. So the categorization here is that it's a type of malware that is under propagation, which is basically the self-replicating and infecting other systems, which will eventually lead to continued infection. Here we have return-oriented programming, or ROP, and it is a technique that allows an attacker to execute arbitrary code in a program by chaining together small fragments of code known as gadgets that are already present in the program's memory, according to CTF Recipes 2023. The difficulty in detecting ROP attacks is due to the intruder not inserting a new code. So basically how it works is it's exploiting a vulnerability in the program that allows the attacker to control the program's instruction pointers, such as buffer overflow or format string exploit. So then the attacker can use this control to redirect the instruction pointer to a gadget in the program's memory, and then chain together multiple gadgets to execute arbitrary code, which again is according to CTF Recipes 2023. The categorization here is that this is a memory-based corruption exploitation technique that is more advanced, and it also uses the pieces already inside a system to conduct its attack. For common social engineering attacks, in general, social engineering attacks are meant to manipulate people into sharing information that they shouldn't share, downloading software that they shouldn't be downloading, visiting websites that they shouldn't visit, sending money to criminals, or making other mistakes that compromise their personal or organizational security. According to IBM, the types of social engineering attacks do include a few of them. So starting off, phishing is where it includes attacks that are digital or voice messages that try to manipulate recipients into sharing sensitive information, downloading malicious software, transferring money or assets to the wrong people, or even taking some other damaging actions. The next one could be baiting, which here it involves the intruder attracting the victims into knowingly or unwittingly give up sensitive information or downloading malicious code by tempting them with a valuable offer or even a valuable object. Tailgating is basically also known as piggybacking. So here it's when an unauthorized person closely is like following an authorized person into an area containing sensitive information or those valuable assets. And from there are many more other common social engineering attacks as well, but that was just a few of them. So overall, the categorization that it falls under is the human-based attacks category. And this is because it is reliant on the people deceiving, whereas the other methods that we had mentioned was dependent on exploiting the software itself. So here, it is trying to gain that access into the system by like having to hijack login information and get past that physical security aspect. So that wraps up my presentation here. I hope you enjoyed learning about the process that it takes to gain that root access, the common attacks, and also some mitigation techniques. That would be all for today, and thank you for listening.